Hello and welcome to Full-Time Live on the Fulhamish YouTube channel, Twitter account and Facebook page. Fulham have unfortunately just lost the South West 6 derby, 1-0 to Chelsea. Obviously, red card in the first half for us, and then unfortunately Mason Mount got the winner for Frank Lampard's side. And joining me today is Izzy Barker.
Hi Dom, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, it could be better. Could be better after that. There's quite a few faces just feel like punching right now. And Farrell Monk.
Good evening, Dom. I hope I'm not one of those faces.
No, you're not. Not today.
Not today. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Unless you're gonna have about a 10-minute monologue halfway through this, then that might change. But
I'll just keep interrupting you. That's all I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Why
We'll just do that.
Come round here right now and punch me in the face.
Exactly. So if we get into it, obviously the team lineup came out. The only change was obviously Lookman in for Loftus-Cheek. Is he no real surprises there?
No, not at all. I believe Loftus-Cheek can't play against his parent club, right? Yeah, so I mean, it was just fairly textbook, really. And Lookman coming in, obviously he'd missed a bit of the Spurs game, but it was clear that Scott was really eager to get him back in and starting. Though I'm sure we'll go on to it a bit more, but I did feel like Lookman kind of looked like a slightly different player coming in. But I guess it was a pretty simple decision, really. That swap there.
Yeah, and the start of the first half, it was up until obviously we'll get onto the red card, but Farrell, it felt fairly similar to the Spurs first half, really.
Yeah, a little bit. I think that Fulham was certainly on the ascendancy straight from the off, although without actually creating any chances. And I thought what Fulham did really well at was keeping hold of the ball and really stretching Chelsea, but also winning the balls in the right area and trying to exploit Chelsea when they weren't trying to be compact and trying to draw us in when they had the ball. And I thought we were really good, but the problem is once Chelsea started to get into the ascendancy and started to getting their foot on the ball, we were very, very eager to just clear the ball anywhere when we won the ball. And it was just, the ball was just coming straight back to us, and it just kept on putting us pressure. And it wasn't until sort of like the 35th minute, I mean, just that period of like 20 minutes before that you could just feel that pressure building and building and building, and you're thinking to yourself, there's a goal coming, we need to do something about this. And then suddenly the game switched again. Fulham had two really good chances that I can think of. The one from Caballero is an absolute golden one. I was thinking straight after that, you need the Premier League, you need to make those chances count. When you're in the ascendancy, punish the other team, make it happen. And it didn't happen. And then straight after that, that's when Robinson saw the red card, and then the game completely changed from there. And you can only see the game going one way from there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, the game, especially the first half, was sort of so evident how both teams need a clinical striker up front. I know Chelsea have got the likes of Abraham Giroud and Timo Werner, but none of them this season have looked like 30-goal season strikers. The best one out of the bunch this season has probably been Olivier Giroud. And obviously we had the Caballero chance where he somehow did the exact same thing he did for his penalty against Everton. It's almost like he's trying and practicing that at Motspur Park on a weekly basis, how he's got the technique completely on point. But as you said, yeah, I think the beginning of the first half, we looked fine. It was that 20-minute period in the middle of the first half where Chelsea were sort of putting us under so much pressure. I think at one point in the 10-minute spell, we only had 7% possession in Chelsea's final third, and the possession was all in the middle park. But someone mentioned it in the group chat. I think Ben Jarman did that. In that first half, the key to the game was Jorginho. It going both ways, because as soon as we broke or could press past Jorginho, we were pretty much not through on goal, but we looked like we could create a chance from it.
Yeah, 100%. I felt like, we were, I think Ben said, I'm pretty much taking the words out of his mouth, is that, they were getting us out wide, and then, we were trying to go through the middle and stuff. But yeah, as soon as we had that, we could go past. And I just felt, thanks to Tete, I feel like he was brilliant, and he completely he looked reborn. He revamped our side, and I think from utilising the likes of Tete getting past, we looked really dangerous. And I'm so pleased to have him back, because it's great to see that kind of depth in our squad to be able to do that and to kind of get one over Chelsea in that sort of way.
Yeah, no, Tete definitely looks a lot better than he did against, obviously, Spurs midweek. I didn't think he was amazing midweek, but today he definitely put in a big shift. Obviously, that cutback to create the chance. And, you can tell how frustrated he was when, obviously, Cavallero or whoever it was that didn't put it in the back of the net. And, I think he was back to the sort of Tete we saw before his injury. We might as well get onto the red card. Farrell, when it happened, what was your instant reaction? What were you thinking?
As soon as he dived in there and Azpilicueta's 50 yards up in the air, and then you see Mason Mount being an absolute, I'm going to say, I could say a few words there. My instant reaction was red card. I mean, even if he gets the ball, which I didn't think at the time that he did, considering how far the player is launched up into the air in this day and age, in modern football, whatever you want to call it, you're always giving the referee, an opportunity to reach into his back pocket and flash the red card. And I don't think there's a debate about it. I think, it's a shame it is Anthony Robinson, because we do rate him very highly. I didn't think that he had his best game for us in the first half. Obviously, he did create that chance for Cavallero, who's in the build-up to it. But defensively against Azpilicueta, I think that he was, the Spanish fullback was actually quite clever in a lot of his runs, and he was caught out at least 3 times from my memory from balls being played in between him or just a little bit of movement and getting balls across. But, I think when considering the time of the game and Fulham were in the ascendancy, when we were trying to win balls higher up the pitch, it was getting ahead of us. And obviously Robinson wanted to keep winning the ball back, and it just got ahead of him. And, maybe it's just a bit of derby excitement, trying to sort of win the game there and then. And it just happened, and that's it. And, unfortunately we now have lost him for, I think 2 more games, which is very unfortunate.
Probably 2 or 3 games. And my initial reaction to it was that I didn't think it was a red on first viewing, but what he's done is he's put the referee in a position that he has to make a decision on this. And I feel like it's one of those challenges where if the referee shows a red, it's going to be hard for VAR to overturn it, that he's made a clear and obvious error. Because obviously there is no stud showing, but it's a very high challenge. It's probably actually his second leg, which hits Azpilicueta, which is the one that makes it most dangerous. But my issue with the way I think Banks was the referee today, the way when he branded the red card, it wasn't like an immediate reaction to it. You had Azpilicueta rolling around the floor, learning from the very best from John Terry, it seems like. And then you had Mason Mount being a little rat, trying to get all up in Robinson's face. And the referee doesn't seem to clock and give the red card until he's seen the Chelsea player's reaction. I know it is probably a red card, but again, Robinson has given the referee a decision to make, and I do think the Chelsea player's reaction has affected his decision. Like, I think that, it could have easily been a yellow card, but then in the same way, it could swing the other way, and you can understand why it's being a red. I don't know what you think, Izzy.
Yeah, I think you kind of summed it up then. I think if you're looking at it in this neutral perspective, as the ref is supposed to be, and you're kind of immersed in the acting from the Chelsea players, yes, you're going to give a red with the nature of the game that is today. But if you're actually looking at the challenge and the technicals behind the actual challenge, and so Robinson, where he makes contact, is different to where the Chelsea player is then holding his leg. So if you actually look at the technicals of the challenge, then it wouldn't have been a red card. But he's immersed in this Chelsea Oscar award-winning acting, and then so I it's not like I'm completely pissed off with the ref, because I understand it. And Mike Dean, are very experienced, and he's in the 4th official. He's explaining it to Scott, and so I understand it, but I don't think it's right.
Exactly.
There was more contact. There was more contact on Azpilicueta when Lookman dived in on him near the end of the game from Lookman. But you could hear, like, you couldn't see it because where the camera can't quite stretch enough down to see the line. But you can certainly, I reckon throughout the entirety of SW6, you can hear Cesar Azpilicueta scream as Lookman slides into his ankle there. But once the referee's going to buy it again, isn't he?
Yeah, so obviously that happened right at the end of the first half. We go into half time, obviously 0-0, which, I think, at the beginning of the half, obviously Fulham fans probably would have taken. But, we were looking back on the Ivan Cavallero chance where he should be burying that. There was obviously a couple of big saves which Alfonso Areola made. So going into half time, I think it was fairly even. Both neither team deserved to be in the lead. And yeah, were you surprised, Farrell, that necessarily Scott Parker didn't go out and make any changes? Like, were you surprised he didn't instantly bring on someone, for example, like Joe Bryan, and instead he left, obviously, Aina to fill the other wing-back role? Farrell seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, is it his internet that's down? So I thought it might be mine.
I think, Farrell, your connection might be a bit. So I'll go throw that one over to you. Would you expecting any changes from Scott Parker at half time, or do you think he was just going to stick with the 10 players that were on the pitch?
Well, as this is the exact thing I was thinking about. I was kind of thinking, okay, you could sort of do a straight swap and bring Bryan on. You could change it defensively, but I believe he stuck with 5 at the back, and then Bobby kind of dropped into this kind of hybrid wing back, right wing role, and then Aina was kind of filling in at left back. But I honestly felt we were doing so well considering the circumstances. I felt like saying to Chelsea, like, you've not found a breakthrough against a 10-man Fulham side that are in the relegation zone at the minute. Like, good for you. Like, I thought we did really well, so I understood why Scott stuck with how it was. Yeah, no,
I thought for majority of the second half, really, we weren't. Chelsea actually were only creating chances realistically once they'd got into the lead. Obviously, they looked, as Carragher seemed to mention, every 5 seconds they looked dangerous from set pieces. But I mean, the ball was just ending up in a dangerous area. They weren't actually creating, clear-cut goal-scoring chances from these set pieces. Antonio Rudiger was a bit of a handful in the box for some of our players to deal with. But I thought, we dealt with the Chelsea pressure perfectly fine. And there wasn't any clear-cut chance. And then we had the odd counter-attacking break, but I think if we were going to attack in this half, it was definitely not going to be to the latter end of it, because there was no point us committing too many men forward, especially in the beginning of the second half. But we get on to, obviously, Mason Mount's goal. The cross obviously comes in from Ben Chilwell, who we know was going to be a danger, and we did see it in the second half with 10 men. The Chelsea fullbacks were, or even wide players, were getting more space to whip balls into the box. We saw one previously from Ziyech when he whips it in with his left foot and it misses, I think, is it Tammy Abraham and then Christian Pulisic, or Giroud and Pulisic when the ball comes in. But obviously Chilwell rips in. It comes to Areola. Farrell, when the ball obviously comes into Areola, do you think he made the wrong decision by pushing it back into play? Could he have caught it or tried tipping it out for a corner? Or do you think it pushes it into touch and maybe Aina should be more alert to try and block the Mason Mount shot?
It's a tough one to criticise Areola too much. I think he does as much as he can do. And it's just one of those things that it falls, straight to a Chelsea player. And, he's got all the time in the world to slam it as hard as he can into the bottom corner. I mean, the only criticism I can probably sort of put around is unfortunately, Andre Frank, Zambo and Gisa. He is absolutely nowhere to be seen. He's actually outside the box when that ball comes in. And it falls into an area where you would expect Anguissa to be. And, that's, you could put that down to tiredness and tired legs. I don't think that Anguissa particularly had a great game today overall. But, and I think in that regard, you wouldn't necessarily put the blame on Areola. Yes, he might have got a stronger hit on it, but, all in all, it's probably falling on someone else. If Areola is getting a decent touch on it, which he did, then it's down to someone else's responsibility. Aina probably should have reacted better to it and got out quicker. But I don't think it's that poor defending from him or any other centre backs. Just could have been better set up. And when you've been hammered like that time and time again, at one time it's going to eventually fall to one of those players just by sheer luck. Perhaps we should have done better about keeping the ball out of the box or where our defensive line should have been. But unfortunately, it just fell nicely for Mason Mount, and it didn't work out for us.
Yeah, I feel like with the goal, there's no one who it's solely to blame to. There was just, as you mentioned, Farrell, two or three small mistakes from certain individuals, which has all accumulated into a goal for Mason Mount. Obviously, you've got the cross that comes in from Ben Chilwell, which Areola pushes away, but he pushes it into the danger area where, as you said, Anguissa probably, or even Harrison Reed probably could have been sweeping up. Where they're not doing that. Obviously, Ola Aina doesn't react straight away. Do you think the goal was just a culmination of all the Chelsea pressure, or do you think there are areas where we could pinpoint that we could be doing better?
No, honestly, it was coming, wasn't it? And I think it was a slight bit of a momentary lapse, a little bit of fatigue from all the centre backs and the defence that had been putting such a shift in. Like I don't want to put the blame on any of them. And also Areola, like he's allowed to have one slip up. Like he's been so good for us. He's allowed to have one slip up, and he tries so desperately. He's so frustrated at himself, and the reaction is brilliant from him. So no, I there was no one I was screaming at the TV. It was just it was coming. The pressure. There was a few gaps. It was a momentary lapse, and I'll allow them to have that. To be honest.
Yeah, if we talk about the chances we created, there wasn't too many clear-cut ones that were in obviously the second half. But the first one that sits in mind is obviously the quick free kick where I don't know what Chelsea are doing. I think it's Azpilicueta. Then obviously Mendy comes out and Thiago Silva has to block Ivan Cavallero's chance. So it seemed once Chelsea scored, even though we were committing more men forward, once we brought on Joe Bryan and Bukayo Kamara, we were playing obviously four at the back. Then obviously later towards in the game, Anderson sort of moved further up the pitch to try and win the first and second balls. But I thought we were breaking Chelsea fairly well. I mean, the only thing that stopped the counter attacks by Ademola Lookman were fouls from Chelsea. I thought Thiago Silva's yellow card, Azpilicueta's yellow card. So we were breaking them down, but Chelsea were just, the fouls we used to see Stephanie Hansen making the Championship type thing. Chelsea were making. So I think, but look, if what I felt from, we weren't counter-attacking, I don't think today with as much speed as we have seen in other games. I feel like we were getting through the lines and we were breaking the Chelsea press every now and again, but it wasn't the speed. I felt that in the midfield, for example, I didn't think Anguissa was breaking through the lines too much. In the last two games, he hasn't looked up to his 100% best. He hasn't really had that acceleration or power driving through. It's been quite lethargic, and Lookman Lookman had a good game today, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't darting through and creating chances. So Farrell, do you think it's we did as well as we could today? And if we had 11 men for the entire game, the way we were breaking Chelsea in with 10 men, we could have actually won this game.
Yeah, and I think that we do need to take a bit of a realism pill here. And actually, we have come across, they're coming up against Chelsea here. They're, as much as they are scumbags, they are one of the best team. They've got players that are the best, one of the best in the league. And when especially for people like Anguissa, he is coming up against, Kovacic and Jorginho, who, albeit Kante's not playing, who's an exceptional player. These two players are brilliant. And, I had a little bit of skip through with, the Chelsea Twitter just to see their rage that Billy Gilmour wasn't starting. I mean, it shows how much they sort of devalue players like Jorginho and Kovacic, who are excellent footballers, and they're very experienced. And behind them, they've got Rudiger, who's not been in the team recently and has won the place back from Kurt Zouma and Thiago Silva. And you saw a lot of that shithousery today. There was so much shithousery from both teams. There was a lot of experience going on. There was a lot of nicking balls away when there was free kicks. There was a lot of even Tammy Abraham, the lesser of the Abrahams, knocking the ball out of Joe Bryan's hands towards the end of the game for the throw-in. There was a lot going on, and it's kind of like a crying shame that the fans weren't in the stands there to witness and sort of get riled up and launch whatever at what they were seeing and everything. It would have been a cracking atmosphere, but I think that's probably if you've got people like Scott Parker on one side managing one team and Frank Lampard managing another team, there's going to be a lot of this whole sort of winding up the other team. And it was, if you were a neutral, you probably would be enjoying it. But from my point of view, I found it totally infuriating a lot of times. And that's kind of like what derby football is. But, going back to it, we are playing against some excellent footballers. And Fulham, and the Fulham players found it difficult to break them down. And we are, that isn't just Anguissa. That's also, I found that Lookman was doing as much as he could, but he was sort of like taking on players. He was finding it difficult. We were losing the ball a lot of the time, like in good positions. Cavallero, man, he has one hell of a first touch. Unfortunately, his second touch, his third touch, his fourth touch, his fifth touch tends to sort of get stuck under his foot, or he plays it to the wrong player. And it's horribly frustrating. It's just a shame that I think against a worse team, we would have got a lot more joy. And I think that's where the difference slightly lies today. I think if with 11 men, we probably would have held them to a draw at least.
Yeah, I agree. I think if it's 11v11, I would have put us being favourites to get the winner in this game, because I think even with 11v11, this game was going to be decided by the one goal in a 1-0 victory for either side. And I think this has been the first game, especially in this Premier League season, obviously with no fans there, where it's genuinely been gutting that there's no fans at the game. Obviously, you have the playoff semi-final and you have the playoff final, but it's the first time we've gone into a game against Chelsea in quite a long time where we've genuinely felt that we can get a result in it, is it?
Yeah, I think going on from what Faz said, like, it's so interesting to see that Chelsea had to pile every man and his dog onto the pitch in the second half to find a breakthrough. And I feel like it's so frustrating because there is no points for us at the end of it. But it's a testament, or if anything, at least, to how good we're playing now and how hard we are to break down, that you have to bring on your star signing, Timo Werner, who doesn't even get a decent shot in. So I think it was if anything, it's just a testament to how much better we are. And it was just crying out for fans this game. It was mad. Like Mason Mount, I was just screaming at him from the TV. He's such a little rat. But yeah, it was a really good game to watch, really fiery. But yeah, it's just bloody frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously, Farrell, with the results today, obviously a win for West Brom and a win for Brighton. These two games, obviously with Man United on Wednesday, but these two games at the end of the month now are humongous.
Yeah, I mean, I don't read into those results specifically. I managed to catch, a lot of those games, but not all of them. West Brom got the victory against Wolves, but I mean, Wolves have been utter toilet for like some time.
The two penalties is just silly defending from Willy Body for the first one, and then Connor Cody for the second one. It's a man jinking past him, and they completely clear him out. And obviously, like West Brom, played Wolves off the park today, and obviously the Brighton win at Leeds. There was always that feeling that Brighton were going to get something at Ellen Road today. I don't know about you guys, but it just felt like they were going to get a result today. But as I said, obviously, a win today would have been unreal and it would have been great. And, if we get a result against Man United, great. But the wins against Brighton and West Brom are so much bigger because, without just trying to sound cliche of 6 pointers, but we're not, because if we win, Brighton can still win. If like today, for example, and West Brom, for example, or if we win on Wednesday, they can win their midweek games. Whereas if you're beating Brighton or you're beating West Brom, you're either getting ahead of West Brom or you're really catching up Brighton.
Yeah, and I still feel confident about going into those games. I feel like the performance today by Fulham was much better than the performances that West Brom and Brighton gave today. Brighton lost to Leeds, didn't they? I can't. It was
beat Leeds 1-0.
Yeah, beat Leeds. I mean, that Leeds team were so unbelievably flat today.
Well, especially when you've got someone like Casilla in net, who I think is absolutely terrible. I think he wasn't even good enough for them in the Championship last season.
And a racist.
Yeah, and they also can't defend for shit. Like they play this amazing football.
All you need to do is like Brighton were like looking the better team going forward, and they had like 5 centre backs on the pitch. And it was crazy because and especially if you saw that for the goal, and they could have had a penalty a few moments earlier. But less about them and onto this team. So obviously Robinson will be out for a few games, I'd imagine, or definitely at least the Man United game, and so will Bobby Reid because he picked up his 5th yellow card today. If you're looking at so obviously we're looking for arguably a new left wing back and someone else to play in the front three. So how do you see Scott adapting this game for the Man United fixture?
It's a tough one because I feel like if you're talking about like potentially Alexander Mitrovic slotting into the front three, I don't think he would suit it. I don't think he suits our setup at the minute. I think we're really creative and dynamic, and I don't think that suits him. So that leaves a question mark there. And then, sorry, did you say left wing back?
Yeah, well, you'd imagine it would just be Robinson slotting in for
Brian
slotting in. Yeah,
and it's a real shame for me. I think it was Farrell. He was saying he didn't think Robinson had his best game, but I just think he gives us so much going forward. So yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like when he's making the runs down the left, Tete is good at it as well. But I think the dynamism he has. That was that one time where he just tapped it around as Pilaqueta, ran round him, and he was able to try put a cross inside the box. And as much as Brian maybe has a better delivery on those crosses, but I don't think he gets into the same positions that Robinson does. And I think that's something we're really going to miss, Farrell.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the only sort of real sort of comparative that we can do recently is the QPR game, and I thought Brian was really good, and he was very effective, very energetic for the entire. He played the entire 120 minutes. There was that. It looked like he was going to go off for a bash of heads, and managed to come on, and then literally set almost. I think he actually set up the goal for Cabano in the end. So that shows that he has the energy, he's match fit, and he's effective as well. So I'm not too concerned about that. The only concern that I would have is in the centre of the park, because Anguissa is having a bit of a drop off in form. And if Lemina's out for, we don't know if it's a long-term injury or a short-term thing, whether he's available, and then if Anguissa goes out, and then you only have Reed as the only real sort of option in that sort of, number six, two number sixes or a 6 and an 8, he's only the real sort of, do we have to change the system in that regard? And that's where I worry, is the fact that the system is working really, really well at the moment. And there are one or two players that would have, if they drop out, the system would have to change. One of them is Bobby Decker over Reed, which is happening. Thankfully, Kenny Tete has come back, so he can play in that right wing back role. Can we play that system if one of the centre backs goes? Arguably, you can argue either way whether that's true or not. I think the most important thing is making sure that system sticks together, and having those players to do it. And thankfully, the players that might not be available for Wednesday won't affect the system too much.
And I think, especially with Bobby Reed getting his 5th yellow card, not like there's any time for him to be suspended, but obviously we have these 2 games before the end, and usually the system resets in February when it comes to 5 and 10 yellow card. I don't know when exactly it is this season, but I mean, I'm happy that he's missing Man United, and he's instead of missing a Brighton or West Brom, where he will be so much more critical to us. Apart from me dragging him into fantasy team, and then even him getting a yellow card, so get me about 1 point this week. But I feel like it's at least he's missing a game where, although we'll look to get something, we're not expecting to get something. And I feel like if I actually spoke about it, and Farrell, you mentioned it there. Is our midfield with Lamina being out injured and Kearney not being in the fold as well, we're looking very, very light in the centre of the park. And, and to be honest, against Man United, I would try and rest Anguissa, because he doesn't look like I don't want him to play another 70, 90 minutes, because we want to try and get him at his best for the Brighton and West Brom games here. And against Man United, even if we have someone like Josh Onomah in there with Loftus-Cheek, at least you've got, it may not be the technical quality, but you've got the physical attributes of someone like Ruben Loftus-Cheek who can hold the ball up, for example, with the likes of Lutman and Cavallero. And Cavallero's been holding the ball up fairly well, as Farrell mentioned earlier. It's just his second and third touches which have been letting him down. But maybe Onomah's physicality in the midfield there could be a bonus for us. Would you be looking to rest players against Man United to save them for the likes of? I know obviously we got Burnley in the FA Cup following that, but save these guys for West Brom and Burnley. But or do you think because we've got that cup game against Burnley in between, Scott Parker will probably just go with full strength, just replacing Bobby Reed and Robinson, who are both suspended?
I think Scott, knowing how ruthless he is at the minute, he'll probably just stick with the likes of Anguissa. But I agree with you. I think Anguissa just looks a yard off the pace. Possibly he's just kind of coming back off a bit of fatigue. Maybe just a slight bit of fatigue, because I presume he doesn't have a huge injury for him not to be playing. And yeah, he just doesn't look quite as bright. For me, I felt the same with Lookman. I felt he didn't kind of look that he wasn't able to kind of unleash these trademark sort of runs down the left-hand side. And for me, every time we've been dangerous, it's always been involved with Lookman, but I didn't feel like it was like that. And so maybe you would want to rest these really kind of integral, energetic players against a game that we're looking to get something, but we're probably realistically, when we're losing such integral players, not going to get maybe what we would have gone into the Chelsea game thinking we would get.
Yeah, and obviously we had the COVID outbreak a couple of weeks ago, and there was rumours which players had it and which players didn't. One of the rumoured players was obviously Anguissa, and Scott Parker did mention that some players hardly had any training going into that Spurs game. And if you're just analysing it, looking about who looks the most fatigued, Anguissa is one of them. So you've seen with other team players who have contracted coronavirus how it's affected them. I think Kai Havertz at Chelsea is probably a big example of that, because I know he hasn't been great this season, but before his injury, he at least looked energetic. Since he came back, he's been very lethargic and looked fatigued. So that might be one of the side effects is having on the players. But if we go off to our comments on obviously YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. So if we go to this one across from our YouTube channel about Cavalera's confidence looking shot in the second half, he was doing well to get out of those tight spaces against Spurs and really could have used that skill today. Farrell, do you think it was just adapting to what the circumstances were, or do you think he looked? And we spoke about it. He's very much a confidence player. That once he gets in the run of things, he sometimes starts pulling off things that you wouldn't usually see him do.
Yeah, and Cavallero is such a bringer about of emotions. Sometimes he do some magical first touches, and the more and more we do go through the season, I am starting to see the value of him, especially in that sort of in that reserved striker role. I'm not entirely sure how to call it yet. There isn't some fancy Italian name that Jack Collins has come up with yet. But there are times where you think, get a good shot away, get it on target, just play the simple ball, do all of those things that you would expect of someone of Premier League quality, and he just doesn't do that. Yes, he is playing in a quite unfamiliar position, but he's now been playing in that position for 10 games now. I mean, I don't know the exact number. I'm just guessing. There was one in the first half as well when we defended it really well. Aina just managed to cut out a crossfield pass. He played it to Tosin. Adebayo played an amazing pass through the lines up to Cavallero, who comes back onto it, gets a good first touch, turns and plays it out wide, and then receives the ball in the box. And his first touch, again, is exquisite. It takes it away from the defender, and he's ready to hit it with his left foot, and he takes an extra touch. And it's just like, it's so annoying. And then he fumbles on it. It gets stuck under his feet, and then the moves breaks down. And you think to yourself, if there was someone of better quality in there doing that, they get the shot away at the very, very least. And it happens quite often with Cavallero. And you would think that a player like him, he'd want to score goals. He'd want to get the shot away. He'd want the opportunity to get his tally up for the season. And he just doesn't do it enough. Very shortly after that, he then has the shot which just goes wide. And it's just like, why does he do for one and not the other? Again, it's unfamiliar and he'll learn. But it might be something that, could be good in another 10 games. But by that point, it's a bit too late. We need something that's going to score goals now. And that one passage of play just really sums up his play. I think, to his credit, though, our upturn in fortunes is coincided with him playing in that striker role, and it's no accident that he's doing that, and it's such an integral role to the system. So I don't think that if we're not picking up results, it's solely down to him. I think he is trying to contribute, but man, it's infuriating, and it's so obvious to lots of fans out there where we're really lacking. And I hope Tony Garner's watching. So basically, he's on the phone right now to all sorts of players trying to get someone in who can do that job for us.
It's obvious to the other players as well, though. Did you see some of their reactions to Cav's misses? Like, surely, we talk about him, thriving off confidence. That must be something that's kind of in the dressing room as well and spoken about, and pressure on him to do. So I presume, that weight will kind of be on his shoulders as well. But maybe it'll be too late by the time he finally kind of finds his finishing boots.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously recruitment. Michael White on Facebook brings up this point here. Our bench, Brian apart, is obviously Championship. Kamara, Cabano. Obviously, we haven't seen what Josh Omlin can do at this level. We know he's a good player, but we haven't seen proven. Do you think that is an issue for us, Izzy, that there isn't at the moment really anyone we can bring off the bench who we know can make an impact? Obviously, we had that of Lookman against Spurs, but today the players on the bench were players some of them wouldn't even start. Were starting for us in the Championship. Do you think that as much as we need, obviously everyone's talking about the striker up front who can score goals, but do you think one of our other issues is our plan Bs off the bench aren't necessarily good enough for this level?
Realistically, I don't think there's that much we can do about it, to be honest. I think with what we've just gone through with the COVID outbreak, sides pick up injuries. I just feel like we just today kind of looked glaringly like we needed more reinforcements kind of on the bench, but I just felt like it was a bad day for that with the COVID outbreak, with fatigues that we've had. We could bring Lookman on last time. Realistically, I don't think we're going to. January is a notoriously difficult market to work with. I don't think we're going to be able to bring loads of saviours in, and I also think we have actually, weirdly, we made really good recruitments in the summer. It was late and it was kind of crazy and mishmash, but we made really good summer recruitments. So I think we've just been unlucky. Like we're just going to have two really key cogs out of the Man United game, but we've got a really good starting 11, and I think and how many of them are new faces. So I think, yes, we need a dynamic striker who can hit the net, but I think that's the only realistic thing we should be targeting, because it is such a notoriously difficult market. And I think today was just a difficult day for our bench as well.
Well, Ryan Babel is commenting on every Fulham post. That means he's coming back.
I feel like he just has that pin emoji, just the easiest place to find on his keypad. Because that's all he posts on any Fulham related Instagram post. But go ahead, Farrell. Yeah.
I was going to say, don't check all the other clubs that he's played for in the past.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so if we are going to wrap up, obviously we have Man United at the Cottage on Wednesday night. How are you seeing this game, Farrell? Some people mentioning in the comment section about it being a free hit? Obviously, I don't really necessarily believe in free hits at the moment, because we are, especially with Brighton's win today, we are looking to get ourselves out of trouble. Obviously, we need to see how Newcastle get along against Arsenal on Monday night, because I think they're one of the teams who definitely could get dragged into this mess. How are you seeing the United game? Are you seeing it as an opportunity where we can get some points on the board, or are you just thinking make sure we keep all our best players fit and not suspended or injured ahead of those two massive 6-pointers at the end of the month?
I certainly don't see it as a free hit. Every game in the Premier League or any league is, and that's what we need. It's not about resting. It's not about all the teams in this league are trying to rest players.
Yeah, and is with because Farrell's mentioned there about not looking at the game for hits, and I guess you can see the results we've got this season are pure examples of that. Our win away at Leicester, getting a point where we probably should have beaten Liverpool at home, the point away at Spurs where we arguably should have won that game as well. It's really important to go into these games not saying free hit, not resting our players, and maybe actually realising that this Premier League season, United are top the league at the moment, but obviously that could change with a game against Liverpool tomorrow. But probably, if you're looking at the points table Man United got after this many games, the last 2, 3, maybe even 4 seasons, they'd probably just be fighting for top 4 with those points at this stage. So do you think it's important to not look at any games as free hits? Because as we've proven this season, that a lot of our points have actually come against the better sides.
Yeah, 100%. Like, look how well we did with just 10 players against Chelsea, who are such a good side. I hate it. It pains me to admit it. And the worrying thing for me is that we really started to find our groove, and we really knew who was starting. Something when we were previously in the Premier League, who even knows who was starting every week? We've got those starting players who are comfortable, and that's why it's so gut wrenching to see the likes of Robinson and Bobby out. But it's great to see that we. I know today was kind of different, but we do have a bit of depth now. It's great to see Tete coming back. You know, he's our player. You know, we brought him in. You know, he's doing well. He's shining, and that's important for players like him to be coming back. Other than our lone players like Lamina, who is out. I don't know why. So it's really important that we've got these kind of permanent signings doing well now, and I feel like he's slotted into our setup really well. He's strong and quick, and he's suiting our creative, dynamic kind of style at the minute. And I think that's really important to have that confidence and to have players like that coming back and doing so well. And that will give us a bit of confidence going to United, because we can bring it to big teams. Yeah,
and I think that's the closing point. And again, we've showed it today that arguably our best performances, the best shots are coming against the best sides. If you're comparing today Spurs, Leicester, Liverpool compared to how we played at home to Brighton, the game against the big teams is where we've played well. Obviously, West Brom didn't really give anything in the game. We obviously beat them, and you know, Sheffield United was back early on the season where we were looking like, you know, we couldn't hit barn door with banjo. Probably still can't, but I mean, we looking a lot stronger at the back now. But it's been full-time live for Fulham's unfortunate defeat in the South West 6 derby against Chelsea. So I'll say thank you very much to Izzy Barker.
Thank you, Dom.
And Farrell Monk.
Thank you very much, everyone.
No worries. Have a good evening, guys. Up the Fulham.